Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of our Open Innovation Thursdays. My name is Marisol Menendez, and I'm an enthusiast and a practitioner of open innovation since many, many years ago already. I have my own company called Bilacato, where we specialize in researching and creating knowledge and methodologies for open innovation. And I also do ecosystem orchestration, mainly, for example, with my female leaders network here in Spain called WITH. And so, it's such a joy for me to do this review every week on a Thursday, 15 minutes conversations with experts from all around the world, different disciplines that participated in creating the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation. And we are reviewing each of the chapters where we are moving through the different topics that create this body of knowledge. And so today is a joy to welcome Stefano and Daniella to our session. Welcome. How are you today?
Thank you, Marisol. Thank you for welcoming us. It's also a pleasure to be here and record this for everybody to share with. Thank you.
Welcome, Stefano.
Welcome. Thank you very much for being here, for this opportunity. It's nice to be with you today.
Thank you. Where are you connecting from, guys?
We're both in Zurich. Rainy Zurich today.
Well, rainy Bilbao as well, but we need water, so we are happy about it. And it's very nice how every week we are connecting all around the world. And we always like to dedicate a little bit of time to get to know a little bit about our guests. So can you please introduce yourselves? What do you do? What's your research? What are you working on?
Thank you. So my name is Daniella Laureiro Martinez. I do research at the intersection of innovation and cognition. So my focus is in understanding what are like the cognitive differences, the skills, the abilities that individuals bring to the processes where they have to engage in adaptation. So how is it that some people are better than others at switching and adapting when the environment changes, and how is it that we can try and learn about that, and we can try to foster those skills in individuals. That, I would say, in a nutshell, is what I do in my research.
So interesting. And you, Stefano?
So this is Stefano. I've been here in Zurich since 2011. I do work basically on the evolution of large technical systems and how they get integrated into organizations, how they leverage, develop strategies to be deployed in various economic profit or non-profit activities. And part of my work is also related to Daniella's, looking at how people, engineers usually, but not only, take decisions about these technical systems that are, it's very difficult to predict how they evolve, what they are useful for. And that is the connection between the two strands of research that we work together.
Interesting. Are you currently in a university or working in an institution there?
We both work at ETH Zurich, which is the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology.
Nice. So interesting. Well, this is very promising. I think we are up to a very good conversation because we are reviewing chapter 37 called Leadership Skills for Inbound and Outbound Open Innovation that you both co-wrote. It's chapter 37. By the way, chapter 37 is the third chapter of this block called Open Innovation and Theory. So this is very, very nice because we also reviewed at the very beginning the definition of open innovation, where we are talking about managing knowledge flows. And we also been talking about that these flows can be inbound and outbound. And this is at the very core of the open innovation definition. So I'm very curious, first of all, to ask you how this chapter came to be. How did you think about writing this and presenting or integrating this into the handbook?
So we received a very kind invitation from the editors of the handbook to write a piece, to propose some ideas, and then they liked the original idea and structure, and that was a very nice chance to to sit down together with Stefano again, because even though we work in the same institution, oftentimes we have like other projects going on, and this was a nice chance to sit down together and reflect on this topic. And what we tried to do in the chapter was, as you mentioned, to connect to the inbound and outbound processes of open innovation, but with a very thorough look at what are the abilities that are needed in the leaders as they flow in this process, as they manage this process, or as they take part in specific parts of the process. So yes, overall, I would say it was a very nice chance to sit down and reflect together and put some ideas, and then also get the feedback from the reviewers and the editors as we were building this together.
This is great. And so what's the chapter about? If you can give us like a general overview for everyone to understand it.
You want to say something, Stefano? Otherwise, it sounds like I'm monopolizing.
No, that's fine. That will be fine. But not sure. The chapter is about, well, leadership skills. That's in the title. And what he did was basically trying to develop a narrative connecting different research projects we have conducted in the past, also with other literature, trying to really reflect on what is expected in terms of skills and abilities from an open innovation leader who has to decide which technologies, which ideas to integrate, which ideas to develop, which ideas also to let go. And to us was very interesting trying to put together the storyline, trying to connect the dots, because again, usually projects tend to focus on one step in the open innovation project, understandably. And this was a very nice opportunity to build a story connecting the different steps. And one thing that I found specifically interesting discussing with Daniela was this outbound part of the story. Because while the incentives and motivation to invest time, effort, and money to integrate ideas generated from outside are kind of clear, it is still difficult to do it, but the incentives and motivations to do it are clear. The outbound part, the letting go of ideas and technologies on which we've spent time and effort, I mean, that's more difficult to do, even psychologically. And what we try to do is to sort of make clear these psychological foundations of these decisions for leaders. That's it.
This is so interesting. Yesterday we were discussing about precisely this, and maybe this is part of the key skills in this knowledge economy that we are living right now. By sharing the knowledge, you are creating new value, and it's important to have those proper skills. What are your discoveries or the main learnings about the chapter?
I think so. To me, it was as Stefano said, like the putting it together through this inbound and then in the outbound, to be able to like connect the different parts of the process and which parts are maybe symmetrical in what skills the leader need, but also which parts the skills require actually very different abilities. And maybe it's not only up to one single individual to have that, but actually to understand what abilities are needed and to search for that in other people in their team. Or, as Stefano said, I think also one of the interesting, let's say, conclusions or realizations of writing this chapter was to emphasize the difficulty, I would say, that oftentimes leaders have in understanding the need to let go of ideas, let go of projects, but also sometimes let go of people. And I think that requires this understanding, like this intertemporal flexibility, to understand that maybe for somebody or for even for a firm, it is better to realize something outside. Maybe it's not so good to have everything under the control of the firm, but to realize or to exploit an opportunity or an idea outside the boundaries of the firm, of the organization. I think that part to me was very salient in understanding the different parts of the process of inbound and outbound, but specifically this ability of letting go of ideas, projects, but also of people. That to me was one of the most interesting parts of putting together the chapter.
And for you, Stefano?
Well, what Daniela said, but again, to me was very useful to really reflect on why is it so difficult to do less in a way, right? This let go of things, of people, is a very difficult step to take because you develop relationships, you develop emotional attachment. But sometimes the best advice you can give to a junior colleague is that it's time to go. And sometimes people come to you and they tell you, I want to explore something else. I want to develop this idea on my own. And I think finding the strength, if you like, to say, yes, that's a good idea, is actually very difficult. And maybe, getting older, I see this tendency of piling up things. So I want to do something new, but I'm not letting go of the other things I was doing. And then you suddenly are, stuck in a calendar that is impossible to manage because there are too many things. And this process of piling up things is a very common problem. And I think the chapter is kind of helping, hopefully helping people to reflect on, how many of these things I'm doing are really fundamental. How many of these things that I'm doing could actually be done better elsewhere and by other people. And this is, again, this outbound open innovation twist that sometimes really sharing is caring, but also sharing is quite difficult, exactly because it implies this ability to let people go.
This is interesting because if you are not letting go, then you are not flowing, you are creating a lake, no? And so in the chapter excerpt also it says like the different dynamics, or refers to the dynamics of individual skills and organizational skills. So how does this embed into the organizational culture and the ways of doing in the organization?
Again, this is of course related to the discussion about culture. Nearly everything is related to the discussion of culture, I guess. So the challenge is really finding the boundaries in terms that become actionable in terms of learning and development. So let me put it this way. Two big components of what we normally call organizational culture are not the only two components, but two big components are motivation or incentives and abilities or skills, right? And we have a little bit of both in this chapter. The abilities is a discussion about what is needed to, for example, critically evaluate how well we're doing and how useful are ideas generated externally and how productively we could develop our ideas instead externally. And this is an important part of any culture. And this is the part of the conversation that is very much related to a conversation on learning and development. Because by changing incrementally skills and abilities, we are also changing over time culture slowly. The other building block is motivation and incentives. So what are we offering? What are we proposing to people in terms of benefits, advantages in pursuing a certain type of behavior versus another one? And if you manage to align the conversation about motivation and incentives with the conversation about skills, abilities, and development, then you're suddenly having a discussion also about organizational culture. That will come, that will follow if you want. But I think for me, at least, these two building blocks are the most important entry points into a conversation about organizational culture. And these are the two building blocks that to some extent we try to touch upon in this chapter too.
This is so very interesting, and I think we could keep talking about this for a long time because we are touching very relevant aspects of the open innovation management, and it's also very interesting for me as a practitioner, and I think we are also talking very interesting topics related to even research, no? So, but we are reaching the end of this 15 minutes conversation. So my last question for you is, what are your recommendations, final thoughts, call to actions, maybe for practitioners and for academics in terms of research? What your final words for this chapter?
So maybe one idea of something related to what we were discussing before about the letting go has to do with something that is very applicable, something that is one can practice. Practitioners could just take the idea and start playing with it in themselves and in their organization. And it has to do with this ability, this skill that we all have about switching our attention. So we discussed before about this difficulty in letting go, in like piling up, in getting everything inside the firm, inside my agenda, etc. And here, a critical ability that we discuss in the chapter and in our research is attention control, and specifically something that is called cognitive flexibility. That is our ability, that we all have it, we all humans have that ability to switch our attention according to the demands of the environment, the problems that we have. And I think that is fundamental to sort of practice that and decide, okay, is this really the best use of my skills? Is this really something I should have, I should keep inside the firm, inside my agenda, as Stefano was saying, or is this something that is better to switch and let go? And I think for people working in innovation, for inventors, for people who are sort of on a more technical side of innovation, this is fundamental as they progress in their careers, as they stop being the specialist and become generalists and they start leading teams, because the tendency would be to keep doing what they were doing before and then add on top of that. But that is not very useful for anybody in the midterm. So I think here, connecting to some findings in our chapter and some other projects that we have ongoing about training this ability, this is something that would be, for me, like a key takeaway from our chapter, and something that hopefully people find some practical application from it too.
It's very interesting. Stefano?
Well, and from my side, building on what Daniela said, again, in the chapter, we discuss a few of these skills: cognitive flexibility, empathy, critical thinking, self-efficacy. But I think the takeaway I would have from this one is, first of all, we should not assume that an open innovation leader or any leader has all these abilities at the same time from the beginning. I think the main takeaway from the conversations with Daniela that led to this chapter is that this is fundamentally a conversation about learning and development. How we learn new abilities, how we develop the abilities that we have. So this is not something that either you have or don't have, you are or you're not. It's really something one can become. Obviously, learning and development is an activity that takes time and effort, and it's not always easy to reconcile in very busy corporate schedules that the needs of learning and development. But at the same time, that is the only way in which we can keep improving and upgrading and doing justice to the roles we acquire as we go along. And again, I think this learning and development conversation is the part that I would hope people bring home after reading the chapter.
Well, this has been very, very interesting. And we, of course, recommend everyone to take a look into the chapter, read what you can get into the practice of open innovation. And I think this is very interdisciplinary, no? We can learn from it in any field of work. And also, of course, keep the good research on that. Thank you very much, Daniela and Stefano. This has been a very, very nice conversation, and I hope that all our listeners also get good insights from it. Thank you very much for connecting, and see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.